most of us would be used to a 3-hour service. Somehow the impression has gone around that if Jesus suffered, and there's a reason behind the 3-hour service, they say from the 6th hour to the 9th hour when he was on the cross, that translates from 12 noon to 3 p.m. So that part is right. That's biblically accurate. But there is this feeling that somehow we have to commemorate by going through some kind of a suffering ourselves. Nothing wrong with that, unless it is done with a very ritualistic mindset. If that's all you think about Good Friday, then we are way off the mark. If you think all we need to do at Good Friday is suffer for 3 hours without food, wear dresses that are more in line with a funeral service, and then we are done with Good Friday, and we'll wait for a day more, and then comes Easter, and then we can put off all the sacrifices that we've been doing in Lent. If that is your idea, you're not very far away from the truth, but if you remain just at that level, if that's only how you commemorate Good Friday, then I think we are way off the mark. I was mentioning at the start of the service, and since some of you were not there, I'll repeat it. Very often we get asked in our offices, it's a very popular question that comes. Brother or sister, this is a sad day, isn't it? It's a day of mourning. Why do you call it Good Friday? Why don't you call it Sad Friday or Bad Friday or whatever? And the answer is simply this, that Jesus died for us. We don't need to suffer because he went through the suffering. We don't need to, in a mocking way, actually sometimes go through this so-called superficial suffering, because there's no need. The price has been paid. The debt has been cleared. The sin has been wiped away on the cross by the precious blood of Jesus. What a good meaning that is. What a Good Friday it is. On this day, as promised for our meditation, taken from Matthew 26 and 27, which is also our homework, which are two very long chapters. Matthew 26 has 75 verses. Matthew 27 has 66 verses. And I request each one of you to find some time to read this at least. Matthew 26, 75 verses. Matthew 27, 66 verses. If there's anyone here who does not have the time, can you slip up your hand? I'm just... do make some time. And taken from here, from these two chapters, are 7 responses to Jesus. Normally we meditate on, and we almost know it by heart, the 7 words from the cross, the words that Jesus spoke. And I'm moving away from that tradition because I believe that you know it very well, and it may not startle you. And that's why we take a different angle. We look at Jesus on the cross, but we look at many responses to Jesus on the cross from around us. So come with me, if you will, to Matthew 26 and 27. On the right from his arrest to the mockery of justice at the trial at Caiaphas' place, and then to Pilate's place, and then down the Via Dolorosa to Calvary. If you will, please come with me for the next 20 to 25 minutes, and let us see the 7 responses to Jesus on the cross. I'd request you to kindly note this and do a further meditation on it. The confidence with which I always request you to note it is simply this. It's not because I'm saying anything great. It's because I sincerely believe that when you meditate on it, you'll get fresh insights more relevant to your life, which a man can never give, which only the Holy Spirit will give you those insights. So kindly note it down. That's my kind request to you. 7 responses to Jesus on the cross. Number 1, The response to Jesus from the cross from the followers of men, the crowd. The crowd was there everywhere. Did you notice? In that entire Holy Week, there were crowds. Jesus was always found among the crowds, and it was a purpose because he wanted to maximize that days before the Passover, before Good Friday. After that, he would largely be with his disciples. But the crowds were there always with Jesus. Palm Sunday, there was a crowd. In fact, even before Palm Sunday, in the feeding of the 5,000 or the 4,000 or the Sermon on the Mount, there were crowds with Jesus. And then there was at Palm Sunday. And then he was teaching at the temple. There were crowds there. He was turning the chambers and the tables of the money changers. The crowds were there. They were listening to Jesus. They were watching the big debates between, it was like our big debates on TV. You know, where the Pharisees and the scribes and Pharisees wanted to corner Jesus. And so beautifully he was answering them with few words. In most of the cases, he answers a question with another question, which silences them. With all their learnedness and all their preparation, they come with a line of questioning, and in just a few words, he overturns the questions back onto them. The crowds were there watching it. And then it says in Matthew 26:47, I just noticed it when I was preparing for this, that even when they came to arrest him, Judas came, and with Judas, a great crowd. Imagine that. At twilight in the evening, a great crowd with swords and clubs. Jesus very gently remonstrated with them. Firstly, he remonstrated with Peter for trying to be violent. And then he remonstrated with them. Did you have to come with so much weaponry to arrest me? Is that what you think of me? I was there every day among you. I was always among the crowds. I was there every day. Why didn't you? It was easy. You could have caught hold of me at that point of time. But this great crowd, I'm reading again from Matthew 26:47, a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. And then the crowd was watching the spectacle. In Hyderabad, if it happened, we would have called it the tamasha. And the crowd was there outside Pilate's palace. And it was this crowd that shouted, Barabbas, we want Barabbas. It was this crowd that shouted, crucify him. It was this crowd that shouted, let his blood be upon us and our children. The crowd, even today, 2,000 years later, for you and for me, the crowd is the comfort zone. Very often in our life, we don't dare to be different, to think different, to act different, to be different, to say different. We don't dare to be different because we want to be one in the crowd. We think there is a comfort with numbers. Very often, even you can think of escapades in your schools and colleges and everywhere where you took comfort in the crowd, where punishment cannot be meted out to a crowd is what you felt. And so you took comfort in a crowd. The crowd, I believe, is the greatest comfort zone. And that's why I named this first category, the response to Jesus, as the followers of men. All people around you, and you blindly follow them. It was a French philosopher, Voltaire, who said something very meaningful. He was talking about avalanche. You know avalanches, right? It happens in the mountains. Especially the snow avalanches are so mighty. They keep snowballing and gets bigger and bigger. And many people die with avalanches. Every season it happens around the world. Even when I was traveling in the Northeast, they say avalanches are quite common. But this is what the French philosopher says about an avalanche, Voltaire. He says, in an avalanche, no single snowflake ever feels responsible. In an avalanche, no single tiny snowflake ever feels responsible. That's the mentality of a crowd. That's what we call in modern days mob mentality. No one feels responsible. Everyone feels that in the comfort of the crowd, they can hide. So the question to you, my dear brothers and sisters, are you a blind follower of the crowd? Are you a blind follower of men? Number two, the second response. The followers of Jesus who fell away. There's a cryptic sentence in Matthew 26 verses 56, the last part of that verse, Matthew 26, 56. Then all the disciples left him and fled. In other Gospels, there is more description. John Mark himself writes about a young person who left his clothes and fled, which could be himself. And when the worst injustice was happening, Jesus was there dedicating his entire life to people. He never had a private moment. He had to, in the dead of the night, go and have private moments of prayer. But the crowd was always following him. But at the time when the worst injustice was being done to him, a mockery of any judicial system in the world at any time, the most innocent person, the man without blemish, was given the worst punishment. That's the worst injustice that could ever happen. At that time, Jesus was alone. Why? Because the so-called followers of Jesus left him and fled. Matthew 26, 56. Even today, we have that category of people. I will follow as long as it is convenient to me. I'm just using a term which you may have heard before. It's called a fair weather Christian. When the weather is okay, I'll come out to take up my responsibilities. But the weather is inclement, I'm not there. Don't count on me during those times. Are you a fair weather Christian? I know people, very proudly they make this statement. I've come across it in the offices where I worked. Many people, Christians, with a Christian name. And they proudly say, I keep my religion away from my work life because I'm a professional. I can't talk about my religion. This is my work life. I keep all religion away from it. They proudly say. But Jesus says, if you are ashamed of the gospel, I will not be able to proclaim your name before the Father. And they say, I will follow the rules of the company. Suddenly they become very obedient to the rules of the company. Doesn't matter if any other pujas or other ceremonies are happening. As far as speaking about Christ is concerned, I'm a professional. I don't want to talk about Jesus. I don't even want to mention in certain times that I'm a Christian because I'm a professional. I've heard people say that very proudly. I would call them fair weather Christians. If things are convenient, if it's just some good things being said about you, then I'm a Christian. But if things are not so convenient, the disciples left him and fled. So followers of men, followers of Jesus who fell away, followers of Jesus only by name. That is number 3. Followers of Jesus by name, but betrayer of Jesus by nature. So they're not only fair weather, there's a category who outrightly deny and betray Jesus. Peter was a mild version of it, but then he came back. But the best example of this is Judas. In Matthew 26:14, Judas asks a question that every professional or every person whom I know asks nowadays. Especially city life has become like this. Judas asks in Matthew 26:14, what will you give me if I deliver Jesus to you, what will you give me? It's a question that many of us ask. What's in it for me? I will not spend even a moment of my time or my treasure or my talent if I don't get anything in return. I'm a calculative citizen of the 21st century in a big city. My time is precious. What will you give me if I do this for you? Judas asked that because his mind is on money. And the choice is very clear. When the choice has to be made, for many of us, it's very clear. We are followers of Jesus only by name, but we are betrayers of Jesus by nature. Money is more important. Black money is okay. Dowry in any form, wonderful. Visa, very important. While the divine order should be God's relationship, Jesus first, family second, work third, they just disturb the divine order and they say, no, work is most important. Then I'll take care of my family. And then when I have time, there's Jesus somewhere in the corner. Follower of Jesus by name, betrayer of Jesus by nature. I want to ask you the third question. Are you a Christian only by name? Secretly playing a game. What will you tell Jesus on the judgment day? When you're standing before Jesus, and that's definitely going to happen, what will you tell him? Lord, I managed to get a promotion and I got a high position. Lord, I managed to purchase 2 cars, 2 houses, lots of jewelry. Jesus will say, you fool. That's what Jesus says in the parable. You fool. That does not matter at all for eternity. You are a follower only by name, but you are a betrayer of Jesus by nature. That's what Jesus is going to say. What are you going to go and boast before him? This is what I managed to do with the life that you gave me. You fool. Number 4. I hope you're making note. Okay? I'll have a little interaction towards the end to make sure that you're making note. Number 4. They're also paid followers. Not of Jesus. But with a little payment, nowadays people will do anything. They were slaves of the kingdom of the world. The best example I can give is the soldiers. But not just the soldiers, there were many others. So many times in these 2 chapters you say, and then Jesus was led away. Jesus was flogged. Jesus, a crown of thorns were put on him. In Matthew 26:57, then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest. And then Matthew 27, verse 27, the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters. And they gathered the whole battalion against one person, and led him to Pilate. They led him to be crucified. If you asked any of them, why are you doing this? Why are you just following this injustice? Because they're paying me. Because I'm their slave, I'm their servant. If they pay me, anyone who pays me, I'll do anything. Because it's my job. That's what they would say. If you ask any of those soldiers, any of those people who were leading Jesus here and there, they would just say, it's my job, I'm just doing my job. Some of them would say it very proudly, and I'm doing an excellent job of it, isn't it? It is my job. So the question I want to ask is, are you a slave of the world? If you're getting money, will you do anything? I was so disturbed. What is going on in our city now is they're uncovering a huge underground market. I don't want to give wrong information. But parents, you have to be very careful. Outside the schools, the ice cream bundys that you see, they're also the peddlers of cocaine. A huge racket is being unearthed. Right now, the police are working on it. Why do they do that? Why are they destroying innocent lives? Destroying it. because I'm getting money for it. That's my job. We are living in a society where comfort in numbers. Number two, followers of Jesus who kept following, who left him, who fell away. Number three, this bench behind you has to tell Ravi, they're not paying attention. Number three, yeah, with your mask, I can't hear whatever you're saying. Like me. Followers of Jesus by name, but betrayers of Jesus by nature. Number four, slaves of the kingdom of this world, paid followers. Number five, I'm talking about the chief priests, the scribes, the Pharisees, the governors, all these rulers, all these people in authority. Do you think they were free? No. They were captains. They were rulers. They were the head of their respective. They were respected in society. But I am naming them the captains who were captured by the devil. In Matthew chapter 4, 8 and 9, the devil in the temptations of Jesus takes Jesus to a high, very high mountain. I'm reading from Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 and 9. I always wonder, what was that high mountain? Was it Everest? Was it somewhere nearby? Was it one of the biblical mountains? Pisgah or Ararat or where? What mountain was it? But the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world with their glory. With my flights of imagination, I'm imagining that it would be kingdoms of the future also. At that point of time, the devil had this ability to predict the kingdoms, which means he would have showed them the huge corporations of the world too, which are like kingdoms. Amazon, Microsoft, nothing to, don't mind if some of you belong to some of those organizations. But the devil showed him all the kingdoms of the world. And this is what the devil said to Jesus: all this I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. And what did Jesus say? Be gone, Satan. You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. But what did these people do? What did the scribes and the priests and the Pharisees and the governors and the rulers, what did they do? They were acting not of their own accord. They had already sold themselves to the devil. What Jesus refused to do, they did. They fell down to the devil and accepted the devil's authority of their life. And that is why I call them possessed people. They were possessed. And very often, you may be, a person of great influence, which means you are also a captain, or you are a ruler, or you're a person of authority. You may be a person of great influence. But with this great influence, you have to ask yourself, are you a good influence or are you an evil influence? Whose agenda are you propagating in your life? Are you worshipping the Lord your God? Are you serving him and only him? That was number 5. Number 6, a very, very unexpected and unusual response came. Just 2 more and we will close. A very unusual response came, and that was nature's response. The inanimate beings responded. Not beings, actually, it's a not. Inanimate objects responded. Throughout that Holy Week, a lot of inanimate objects responded. Do you know that? In the Palm Sunday story, this is what Jesus says in Luke 19:40. He said, the stones will cry out. And then when he was educating his disciples in Matthew 21:21, they were standing in front of the fig tree and they were marveling at how the fig tree withered. And he said, you will not only do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, it will happen. And then in Matthew 27, verse 45, which was just read to us, by Brother Neeraj. It says, now from the 6th hour there was darkness all over the land until the 9th hour. Inanimate nature responded. And then in verse 51 it says, the earth shook and the rocks split. Nature, inanimate nature also responded. And the response was far better than most of the other responses that we have seen. And the final one, the 7th response, the true believers, the sincere disciples. I'm just looking at Matthew 27, verses 54 to 61. You have many of these people mentioned there. Matthew 27, beginning from verse 54 right up to 61. All the women, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, mother of sons of Zebedee, John, to whom Jesus entrusted his own mother, Mary. And then the centurion, who had the guts to say, after looking at the whole spectacle, the centurion in verse 54 who had the guts to say, truly this was the Son of God. Not just the centurion, but all those with him exclaimed. These were true believers. At the cross, their response was the right response. A rich man from Arimathea, who was also a disciple of Jesus, he had the courage to go and speak to Pilate. And he was the only one who had the courage to go and speak to Pilate. Not only did he have the courage, he had a spirit of sacrifice. He gave his own tomb to Jesus, a tomb which was immortalized throughout history. And then the disciples later on, who all come back together. And the thief, which is not mentioned completely in Matthew, but in Luke 23:42, there is also the thief who at the last moment of his life became a true believer and a sincere disciple. He said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. So in closing, I want to ask, who are you? Be very honest with yourself. Are you a follower of men? A part of the crowd, just 1 in 7.7 billion? Or are you a follower of Jesus who fell away, who frequently falls away? When trouble comes, do you get closer to him or do you abandon him? Number 3, are you a follower of Jesus by name and a betrayer of Jesus by nature? Your nature is to betray Jesus at the slightest instant. Worshipping money, fame, name, materialism, and betraying the sacred name of Jesus. Number 4, are you a slave of the kingdom of the world? Number 5, are you a captain, a captured captain, a bad influence? And lastly, are you a true and sincere disciple who believes that the cross is the most precious thing in this earth? Not the grand crosses that we see on towering cathedrals, or the beautiful jeweled golden crosses that we see in necklaces, but the cross which is a symbol of suffering and shame. To that cross, are you a true disciple? One of my favorite authors, Malcolm Muggeridge, he did a series of TV shows way back in the 70s on great Christian heroes down the ages. And one particular episode number 2 of a series that was called The Third Testament, he talks about the French mathematician and scientist Pascal, Blaise Pascal, who had a dramatic change in his life when he accepted Jesus as his Savior. So dramatic was his change that towards the end of his life, he gave up everything which he said meant nothing to me. In spite of all the opposition, this scientist, this mathematician, this amazing person of logic clung on to the cross of Jesus Christ. And Margaret says that towards the end of his life, he had given away all his books. In those days, a collection of books was very, very valuable. He had given away everything, including his own books that he had written. And he had only 2 books with him when he died. And one was the Bible, and the other was the book written by Saint Augustine. What a wise choice. And this is what Margaret says about the life of Blaise Pascal. He says, Pascal, in his arduous spiritual journey, took us right up to the cross of Calvary. And it is this cross where there is an intersection of time and eternity. Because it was on this cross where God himself died in the person of man. And on the 3rd day, a man himself rose from the dead in the person of God. To this cross and to all that this cross stands for, my dear brothers and sisters, will you be a faithful follower, focused till the very end, unwavering and steady. And may God bless you as you cling on to this cross with all its suffering and shame. May God bless you and lead you.